Well, welcome. It's that time of year again. Time when we got to get our kids back to school and get them in the learning mode, or for those of you who don't have children or grandchildren, time to follow those yellow school buses. But let's find out what's happening inside the district. But first, introductions.
Dr. Kevin McIntyre, Superintendent of the Milford Public Schools.
And congratulations for taking the helm.
Yeah, thanks, Al. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited to be in the superintendent role, and humbled, actually, in the Milford Public Schools. It's a place I've come to really love.
And now?
Craig Consigli, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Assessment and Instruction.
Well, that's a long title.
It's a very long title.
Kevin, you take over 4,400 kid school system. What's your vision for our schools?
So my vision for the Milford Public Schools is really to provide a world-class education for every student that we're serving. And our goal really is to be focused on student growth and achievement from pre-K all the way up to our seniors, to really make sure that the students have the opportunities to get where they want to be. Because really, when we're looking at like programming and curriculum, we're not planning for the jobs that exist today. We're planning for the jobs that may not even have been thought about yet, and which is challenging, because a lot of our students have an interest in technology, have an interest in the sciences, regardless of what their interests are. We're really trying to make sure that we provide them with the tools to be problem solvers, critical thinkers, creative, the ability to, read and understand what they're reading and really be able to critically kind of examine it, and also kind of come to kind of conclusions through analysis as well. So we want those students to have those skills that when they go to college, when they go to work, they're ready to kind of hit the ground running and really be successful.
Well, it's always interesting, because when I became a chemist, back when the periodic table had 3 elements, it was always this swing. You came out of school and you had to decide whether you wanted to go into chem-eng or chemistry. And the funny part was, people would see a glut of chemists, so all the kids went into chem engineering, not thinking that 6 years from now, when they come out on the market, you're going to have this glut of chem engineering students graduating and no chemists. And it always seemed to go round and round.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're seeing the same kinds of things in terms of, where students want to go. And if you look at the trends nationally, you're seeing, I think it's something like somewhere between 75 and 90% of new jobs are going to be in the STEM field. And so we're really trying to give opportunities to our students, even as early as the Woodland Elementary School, where we have a STEM elective. Obviously, we have science programming, science classes, the same thing in the middle school. And we're really trying to grow our programs at the high school, where we have a number of AP offerings for students for science. We have robotics, a number of computer classes, broadcast media courses. So there's a variety of courses that kind of fall into those technical fields. We even have a group of students that do most of our computer and technical repair across the district, because they're part of Dan Nelson's computer
Yeah, I always remember when we saw the budget.
Yeah.
And he said, well, who are all these? Well, those are students.
Right.
How cool, I thought, that not only is the town saving a lot of money, but when you figure that, I'll be kind, but 75% of the problems are the chair-to-keyboard interface.
Right.
It's true.
Right.
At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
it's the person that causes, and these kids seem to be, if the person causes the problems, they seem to have this intuition of how to fix them quickly.
And it's amazing, when we get a new set of devices, and we're going to be getting Chromebooks at the new Woodland Elementary School, for example, how quickly the students figure out kind of what the top 10 or 15 issues are and how to quickly solve them. And it's really amazing. And what they're learning in terms of not only the technical piece, but the customer service side of the kind of the business too, in terms of how do you diagnose a problem, how do you work with a teacher or an administrator, and how do you help them
And they're at a disadvantage, because they're a kid.
Absolutely.
It's like when you walk in, it's like, hi, Mr. Consigli.
Right. Except that what they have going for them is their ability to fix whatever the problem is. So they're a hero right when they walk in the door. Because really, all the person wants that's sitting at the chair is, just help me, please, show me how to do it. Especially if you have a classroom of kids sitting there. That could really, I guess, frustrate a teacher, but turn them in the other direction as far as technology goes.
So now, tell us about yourself. I mean, I got the ultimate reference when I asked my daughter, who is this guy? And she kept saying nice things about you, so.
Well, that's good.
Or she's woefully misinformed.
Yes.
Well, father of 5, so that keeps me running. But I started as a teacher at Stacy. I taught there for, I think it's 6 or 7 years. Moved on to principal at Middle School East. Became principal at Woodland when the building project first, well, I don't want to say first, but was approved. So I was right there at the planning level. And then when Kevin got his role, I thought that, you know, I think it's time for me to step up and get that district level experience.
Is it a hard decision to leave the classroom?
I think you know when it's the right time. When I was teaching, I was also coaching. I started having my family, and there was a lot of nights out, just a lot of time. And that kind of pushed me in the leadership direction. But once I got into my grad work, there was no question that that's where I wanted to be once I start learning. And the thing is, once you go to school and you start reading, you really don't know what you don't know. And I quickly discovered that, geez, if I get in this leadership role, I can help so many more people.
You can obviously leverage yourself.
Yeah, and work with so many more people and interact with, you know, not only kids, but other teachers and administrators and families and community members. So it felt right to me once I started getting into it.
Great.
Can I toot Craig's horn for a second before we move on? The thing I love about Craig, and why I think he's ideal for this role too, is he's a constant learner. He's someone who has probably 2 or 3 books going at any time that he's reading, because he's always looking for that best practice or that way to improve any aspect of what we're doing. And you can't put a price tag on that kind of, I think the energy he directs towards that really is going to benefit the Milford Public Schools globally, because I think he has that global vision.
And the family has a little bit of a tie to Milford.
It does. It does. And, you know, that's one of my favorite things is, you know, walking in downtown and someone will stop me and talk about my grandfather and, geez, look, that's the building, those are the bricks that your grandfather laid and helped lay the foundation for the town. So, I don't know, it always makes me feel good when people stop me and talk about that kind of thing.
I told my daughter she's now official Milfordian, because she's 3rd generation Milford, and she lives within 2 miles of her mother.
There you go.
So she's actually...
So she's in finally.
She's in. She's a true Milfordian.
Okay.
Let's deal with an ugly subject. Patch comes out and says, Milford test scores. I mean, I think the technical term was yuck.
Uh-huh.
You know, that they play out that our test scores don't match any of the surrounding towns, that we're much worse.
The tricky thing right now, and anytime you look at data, it's tricky on a number of levels, but the only grade right now that is tested in MCAS for English and math this year is Milford High School in 10th grade. We also have science in 10th grade as well, and then we have 8th grade science and 5th grade science. Those are the only MCAS tests that are left. And if you look at our biology scores, they're a little above the state average. If you look at our English scores, they tend to be a little above. This year, they're, I think, a point or 2 below. The math scores this year, we took a little bit of a hit on in 10th grade, but if you look at our PARCC scores, 3 through 8, and again, we're waiting for the state data to come out connected to the PARCC exams and the national data connected to the PARCC exams. What I can say last year in terms of PARCC is on 8 of the 12 areas, we were above the state average of the tested areas. And our growth numbers were really good, very robust across the board. So the 10th grade paints it's a small picture, but if you look at where our students are going when they graduate from high school, which I think is the real kind of measure of a high school, this past year, Harvard, Holy Cross, Boston College, Boston University, UMass Amherst, the Honors College, Drexel, RPI. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on.
And that's really the ultimate judge.
Absolutely.
We can say whether you're doing a good job or not, but when my daughter applied, Of course, my Emily only applied to Holy Cross. So that was
Do you want to follow in Dad's footsteps?
Well, she grew up going to alumni events, and she only applied to one school. Scared the living out of us. You know, he said, you got to do an early decision just in case. But Lexi got into every school she wanted to get into. And I sit there and I say, that's really, to me, your report card. You know, did you do your job? I mean, at the end of the day, yes, I want you to educate. I want you to broaden her horizons. Now, I want you to get a seat at the table for her, wherever she wants to go. And if you don't, I don't want to hear about the rest.
Right.
But a lot of people get nervous because they say, okay, I'm putting a lot of time and energy into my kids. You know, and of course, in my eyes, I've got the most beautiful, most intelligent kid in the world.
Absolutely.
But if I see that the Milford test scores, you know, a little bit above average, personally, I think average sucks. So,
well, you know, if I could put that into context for you, Al, if you look at, and I've said this and I sound like a broken record at some points, but if you look at Massachusetts, we're the highest performing state in the country on most, on generally every national measure. So if you look at SAT scores, if you look at ACT, any number of measures, in the PARCC test, the first year they did it, when we actually had the results, we were far and away above every other state that took the PARCC test, which was about like 13 or 14 different states, and I think Washington, D.C. If you look at national tests like PISA and NAEP and a few other, what's the other national test? I'm blanking on it.
I don't know.
no matter.
TIMS is the other one.
Yeah.
But if you look at those measures and you take Massachusetts and disaggregate it out if it were its own country, we're consistently landing in the top 10 and frequently in the top 4 or 5 internationally.
So Massachusetts has a higher bar.
The highest bar in the country, which is, it's hard for people to realize that because they see, you see all the negative articles about public education generally, and you look at, and the vast majority of public schools do a very good job, but if you're a little above average or right at the average in Massachusetts, you're probably head and shoulders above most public
Arkansas
schools.
and places that,
I wouldn't even say Arkansas.
you know, Montana, I don't care about that.
Yeah. But
Why would I keep my child in Milford if I can look across the border and see schools that are scoring much higher?
You know, I think there's a ton of good reasons, but if you look at a lot of the districts around us, most of the districts are significantly smaller than the Milford Public Schools, and the opportunities just aren't there. So we have, in some cases, more AP courses in a particular, like English, for example, than they may have courses. So you kind of think about that. We have 20 plus AP courses.
And I guess, Kevin, what I'm getting to is, we seem, if we break up the demographic, I personally think you get a much clearer picture of what Milford offers.
Absolutely, and we've had, and there's a number of factors I think why our math scores are slightly below this year, a few points below. I think it's about 7 points below, which is unusual. And you don't want to base anything on 1 year of data. You want to look at trends and patterns, probably about 3 to 5 years of data.
I think of my family. My cousin came from Portugal.
Absolutely.
Didn't speak a word of English. I mean, when I left my house for the first time to go to West Street School, I had no idea what this language they're speaking out there is. You know, it doesn't sound like Portuguese. That's all we ever spoke in my house. But you adapted.
Right.
My cousin took a couple years before he became fluent and flew up the food chain.
Absolutely.
But those years, if you were grading him, do I feel good that although some of these kids who are inheriting, who have little or no formal education, are now moving faster than we could expect? Yes. But do I expect them to test as high in English?
That would be completely unfair. And that's one of the things, we have kind of almost 2 different groups. We have a group of students that will enter like in kindergarten and go through, and by the time they get to 3rd and 4th grade, they tend to do very well because they've been in the Milford Public Schools, you know, for kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade. We also get, and we had kind of a high population, probably 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and those students were part of our MCAS cohort. And those students came to us from generally a background where they hadn't been in school since maybe 1st or 2nd grade, and didn't have even the content knowledge in their native language, and they're being asked, which I think is somewhat unfair, to not only learn a completely different language, but also make up 7 to 8 years of academic performance that they completely missed. So it'd almost be like if you and I were to be dropped into Korea, into like a middle school, and we both have college degrees, we're both college educated people, we would really struggle to pass 5th grade Korean elementary school.
Right. Korean grammar.
Absolutely.
Now, again, now it makes me feel better because we take the group that's just learning and we take our advanced or typical kids, but the scores aren't reported that way. They're averaged.
They disaggregate the data, but the data that gets reported out to the media is really that just
They're
one.
just aggregating
that one
all the
umbrella.
scores and saying, here's your average
Absolutely.
number.
Absolutely. And that's why you see things like we've got the valedictorian went to Harvard last year, and we have a number of students that went to great schools, great colleges and universities. We already have a student who I believe is accepted to Yale for this year coming in. So you see the kids, the students who have been with us from kindergarten all the way through, are basically getting great opportunities in terms of college choice, career choice when they leave the Milford Public Schools, and we feel really good about that. What's difficult with the data is I think we have a group of students who, due to no fault of their own, because they're learning a language and they're learning the academic skills, are put in the same bucket as students who've been with us, since the jump, and have been consistently in an academic program.
And I think that's what
K through 12.
scares parents. When they look at a raw number, the mean score, the average score in Milford, is lower than the next town here or there. But I remember, and as I mentioned before, when 8th grade, middle school East, when I looked at Tommy, we were on the parents' council, Tommy Davern, who somehow you could see the pride that he had about his students. And I walked in one night in a meeting, I said, why do your MCAS scores suck so bad? And he looked at me and
That's because subtlety's never been your strength.
well,
has it?
no, but I mean, Tommy also was so subtle. And he looked at me and says, because you're ignorant. I said, okay, enlighten me. And he showed me that our top kids, if you could just use that Gaussian curve, we were heads above many towns, but on par with all towns. But when you blend it in, the average, these kids who, like you say, I'm learning a language and trying to learn English grammar at the same time, I'm not going to score as high.
Right.
When it was one repository of numbers and I just aggregated them and took an average, of course we're not going to look as good. But to me, we want to make sure that parents understand, regardless of what curve you're on, the school system will take care of you.
Absolutely. And the diversity really is, I think, a strength. And one of the things I really love about the Milford Public Schools, one of the programs they're running at the high school now is they're taking our students who are speaking Spanish and Portuguese in the language classes and teaming them up with our native Spanish and Portuguese speakers, and both groups are benefiting. The one group is benefiting from the English, the other group is benefiting from either the English or the Portuguese, and it's a great partnership. And we just tried it out this year. We have a couple new faculty members that are kind of piloting this, and it's fantastic because now the kids are speaking to each other both in English and in either Portuguese or Spanish in the hallway as they're walking by each other, and it's really developing kind of a nice, not only a nice cultural connection, but a great learning opportunity for both groups.
And it's a mindset, because I remember when we went to live in Paris, and my darling bride was trying to learn French. She had never had a second language. So, things like, why is a table feminine?
Right.
I don't know, it just is.
Right.
Once you learned, especially one of the Romance languages, whether it was a Portuguese, Italian, the next one, like Spanish for me, really didn't take a lot to learn it.
Right.
Because, knowing Portuguese is my first language, the others just...
Spanish isn't a big leap from Portuguese.
But
in a lot
even
of
the
ways.
Italian, and you hear the kids, once they're in a frame where they can think in a second language, it seems to come easier.
Absolutely, and it's something we're trying to push. We've got a global citizenship program now that we're really looking at, because we've got 4 exchange programs going on now at the high school where we send students.
Yes, we usually have the French teacher staying at our house.
Okay, good. So you're very familiar. with the program. But we just had the Spanish students and the Italian students have just come in September. And it's just a great experience because you see just an excitement in both groups. The students we bring in and our students here in Milford, they're so excited to be part of these programs.
Now, did I hear you have a college course?
We
in
do.
Milford High?
We do. Craig, you want to speak about that?
Yeah, the college, I can't remember the name of it, but it's an environmental biology type class. It's run through Framingham State. The professor is now one of my new idols.
We had to drag Craig out of the first class.
I wanted to take the course myself. His research is in alligators, so this is how he starts the class. He has these pictures of himself wrestling alligators out of the water and collecting data on them.
That's not part of the course, I hope.
We brought no live alligators
Right.
onto the Milford High
No
School
alligators
campus.
in Milford High?
But think of how engaging that is for a junior or a senior in high school to have this person now teaching you a course and all the great things that they're learning. I mean, it's phenomenal.
And it's a direction we really want to go in because what we want to see is some of the data nationally that we're seeing is we do a very good job of getting students into college, but nationally what we're seeing is kids aren't completing their 4-year college degree.
Really?
And the completion rates, I think if they were publicized like the dropout rates are for high school across the country, people would be horrified. And think about the public education, which again, the community pays taxes to kind of support the public schools. But if you're sending a student to a private college or university, you're spending somewhere between
It's 60 grand for a private school.
Exactly. And so if you go there if you finish in 4 years, you're talking 240, let's say. 5 years, 300, 6 years, 360, because they don't give you a discount if you change your major or don't pass a few classes. So what we're trying to do is increase the number of courses we're offering. And we're going to start after school, and I think we're offering one in the fall right now. We're going to probably expand that to 2 in the spring. And then we're going to look at summer options. If students are interested in coming to Milford High School or onto either the Framingham State campus or one of our other partner campuses to take courses with a group of high school students to get a flavor of like what are the expectations in high school versus college? What does the workload look like? Because people hear horror stories about their freshman year and spending 16 hours a day in the library. And what does that look like? And we really want the students to have that kind of authentic experience. We have a ton of AP courses, and the AP courses are great, but it's a slightly different model than actually taking a college course taught by an alligator wrestling professor.
Well, I remember our senior year, there were 3 of us that just basically ran out of science courses. And, Uncle Paul, who my idol, talk about somebody when he found out I wasn't the best at attendance in school, he would go from North Bow Street up to the Heights and pick me up and drive me to school. You could not skip that day when your principal is picking you up. But he sent 3 of us over to, back then, now it's Suffolk, Dean Jr. What an eye-opener, to be in the middle of college kids who were taking it a lot more serious than we were.
Right.
Yeah.
But it really did open our eyes to what's in store.
Absolutely.
So what was great about this course is these kids have a full schedule in high school, and they're back after school taking a college course. So I mean, it just is. They volunteered for the course. I don't know. I think
so. They carry a full load plus a college course.
Absolutely. And some of these students are taking an AP course or 2. And it's a full course plus. So we're looking to expand that program. We'd love to move it to a place where students come out with a year's worth of credits, because what we're trying to do, there's a thing in the UMass system called the mass transfer block. And this is like a group of courses that would transfer flawlessly to any state, college, or university, whether it's a 4-year school, a 2-year school, a college, or university.
That's going to save you 20 grand if you, a year.
Absolutely. And we can never guarantee what a private school would take, but generally if it's in the mass transfer block, it kind of falls, because you walk away, these students will walk away with a Framingham State transcript with whatever grade they get in the course.
But Kevin, think about it. Okay, I won't take all your credits. You're only going to save 10,000.
Right. Which is still it's still a phenomenal deal.
You start thinking about the scholarships and all. There's not too many $10,000 scholarships.
Correct. So we're really trying to figure out what kind of value add can we offer the Milford community, the Milford students and the families. And I think this is a good direction to go
This
in.
is great for the advanced kids.
Yeah, and we're trying to get it, because we tend to send more than 80% of our students to college every year. So it's not just the advanced students. It's kind of like that 80%. Why not take advantage of it? Because you're going there anyways.
I'll let you talk fact or fiction. We inherited all these kids from Texas last year. Cost us $500,000 incremental. And they have to cause, we had people at town meetings saying they're going to cause problems. Of course, I got yelled at because, to me, once they arrived here, they bleed Milford red. They're our kids. Don't care. But fact or fiction? Are they really causing us stress on the classrooms and lowering educational standards?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And they're actually, I would say, enhancing kind of the Milford Public School experience. I think the high school example was a pretty good one. I think Milford has kind of a history of being an immigrant community to some degree. And I think this is just a new group that's coming in, and as a public school, we welcome everybody that walks through the doors. And they've really, in this particular group at the high school level, it's a challenge for them, and you almost feel for them because they're coming to a new country, don't necessarily understand the language, haven't been in school for a while. But I've got to give Jen Norjanian, who was our EL director, a ton of credit because they've, and Carrie Bonnick, the principal as well, because they put together a great program that supports their language needs and gets the students to also be part of the greater high school community.
See, Carrie's one of what I call old school. You can see the love and the pride that she takes. This is not, every time I've run into her at the special needs dances, this is not a job.
Right.
You can just feel the passion she has for the kids and her role.
And it really shows, and the kids get it too. They see it because she's at every football, whenever, and I feel like I'm at Milford High School a lot at night for meetings, but whenever I'm there, she's there. And I know if I'm not there, she's probably there.
The other thing that we always had an issue, I mean, we all like to go to sports, but the bandies.
Absolutely.
And, wait a minute, where's our principal standing there? I mean, I was so impressed when Bob Trombley got up with his little baton. I had no idea what the heck he was doing. But when you looked at the effect he had on the parents,
absolutely,
that, hey, they care about us. It's not just one segment of the school.
And Carrie does a very nice job of, I think, supporting all of us.
She's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
But, not only Carrie, I think all of the administrators do that in their own different ways. They may not have the sports teams or the bands, but they're all running events. They're all there at night. I think it was this past Saturday, there was a Brookside Carnival that I saw pictures from. So, I mean, it's all of them.
Well, I never will forget, and I've mentioned it a few times, when we ran into a really ugly budget crunch. I saw the big concessions that some communities made where their educators got up and deferred their raises. And I don't know how that helps you, because if I can't afford my mortgage today, doubling it up in a year just doesn't sound appealing. But I remember our teachers saying, we'll give up our raise if you keep that money in our system and not lay off teachers. That is a profound statement. And it really does show how much the Milford educators care about Milford. And
what people don't see is the teacher who buys a coat for a student in their class that maybe can't get can't afford a coat. We did the summer feeding program with the YMCA this past summer, connected to Memorial Elementary School and our Brookside Summer School program. And I was overwhelmed by not only the number of students who volunteered to help support that program, but we probably had 25 of our teachers and faculty, other faculty members who, during the summer, during their own time, are showing up, helping to serve lunch, run activities, and just out of the goodness of their heart. And it's stuff that people don't see, that they do behind the scenes. And I'm probably moved, I would say, 4 or 5 times a week by something a teacher has done that was just completely under the radar screen.
And they're so creative. I mean, I've been on the back end where I get, you took money away from my kids. And I was like, excuse me? We need copies. It's like, there's no photocopier at Milford High? And I hear, not for 800 color copies. And it's like, well, why do you think? She goes, well, it's okay. It's only the special needs kids, Dad. They can live without it. Oh, okay. Now how can I live with myself when I find myself with a case of color copies? You know dang well if the school had to pony it up, they would.
Absolutely.
But I get home and I shake my head like, okay. You know, it's like the fish that sees that shiny little thing in the water with the hooks.
Yep.
You know you shouldn't do it, but you're going to anyway.
You're going to bite it. You're going to bite.
Now, subject that has always been near and dear to me. My father came to this country. You put him in organic chemistry, he would not do well. He was not an academician. Put a tool in his hand, he was a dang artist. You know, you talk about Grandpa Consigli and laying down bricks. These people were artists. They built our town. Today I worry because if my father came to the Milford school system and he wanted to be a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, if he's not in the top 20% or 10% of the class, he's not getting into BVT. What are we doing for people like that?
So there's a number of things we're exploring right now. The hotel and hospitality tourism management program is
Which I
one.
thought was a wonderful idea.
And it's been a great success, and the students now are running basically every program or event that we have, pretty much from grades 3 on up, because they ran the Woodland kind of closing ceremony for the faculty. They do the welcomes when the exchange students come in. The prom fair, it's incredible. The other thing we're really exploring is partnerships with community colleges. And one that we see a potential value in is there's an automotive technology technician program and through Mass Bay. And what they do is they have a program where each dealership actually donates a garage and the vehicles for the students to work on. So the students take some academic classes to kind of make sure that they can do some of the back end stuff, and then they actually work on the cars, whether it's Toyota or Lexus.
Oh, hallelujah. So if I can't get into BVT because my grades aren't there, I can still become a mechanic or a plumber and you can help me.
And that's something, and again, we're at the very early stages. But we're really trying to, because a lot of the community colleges provide those programs, and we wouldn't become a vocational technical school.
No, you can't compete.
Right, exactly. But the early college piece for them wouldn't necessarily be the biology course with the alligator hunter. It would be like maybe going for a couple summer courses at Mass Bay or QCC, and becoming an electrician, becoming a plumber. And we're going to try to find ways to support some of the students who are have the aptitude and the interest to do that kind of work.
So what's going to happen with your old home? I mean, we bring it on Woodland, and Middle School East is kind of there.
It's right now, that's where it is. It's kind of there. The things that Kevin was just talking about, those, in our long-range planning, I think on some way, maybe we have to find a home for those. But the reality is we don't know right now. We don't know what we should be doing with that, and it's hard to let it go when you're not sure if you're going to need it later down the road.
And there, Craig, we've had this discussion many times with different people. You can't let it go.
Right.
Because even if you let it go, this fallacy, this myth that Kevin's going to walk in with the keys to the selectmen and say, here, it's yours, handle it.
Right.
Well, first of all, it costs money to keep the building.
Right.
Because you're not just going to, it's not going to be like a Stacy where we boarded it up and let the pigeons take over. So the first thing we do is we pay those kind of global debt, bonds, health care, right off the top. And the school gets 62% of what's left. So one way or another, even if you did walk in with the keys and say, here, you're still paying 62% of maintaining the building.
Absolutely, because it's coming from the same bucket.
And then more importantly, in my mind, even if you gave it up today, I said this before, if we needed part of the high school more than any other part of the town, you'd give it up. You wouldn't like it, but you'd give it up because it's the best for the town.
Right.
So even if you gave up Middle School East in a year or two from now, we had a great use for it in the school system, it's not like you're not going to get it back.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
You know, at the end of the day, you do what's best for the town.
Yeah, because we're all in this together. We really are. And one of the things we're doing a long-range planning process right now, where we have the MSBA coming in, and they're doing an assessment of the entire district to kind of see, you know, what shape are the buildings in. They have a statewide queue, and you know, where do we maybe fit
Right.
into? You know, whether it's looking at the high school, whether it's, you know, looking to relocate the preschool. There's a number of things we're going to be looking at.
Well, one way or another, I mean, I got Mark yelling at me saying, don't say there's a school coming. You know, it wasn't a dozen years ago
Right.
when we started with the stabilization.
Right.
And over the years, people kept coming to us saying, why do you have so much money in there? We said, there's a school coming.
Right.
And if you look, Franklin now, when they did their high school, they had to do a debt exclusion.
Huh.
So at the end of the year, you get a nice little tax bill, and then, hey, by the way, Craig, we'd like another $500 from you for the next 20 years.
Right.
We did Woodland, and I feel really proud that it's tight, as you know,
Absolutely.
but there's no foul language like 2.5 override or
Right.
Correct.
debt exclusion.
Eh.
So, you know, I'm already sitting here saying, there's a school coming.
Absolutely.
You know, you think probably 8-10 years from now,
Right.
we haven't done anything in the high school since I graduated first out of there in '74.
Right.
You know, so the idea of throwing you out, you know, Lenny Marcone out, and Lenny and Jen Walsh are wonderful,
Oh, they're fantastic.
but you need to have papal blessing to get in during the day.
That is very true.
But nobody would want any less security.
Right.
The last thing in the world you'd want to do is make it easier
Right.
to get into school. But there's a lot of people who need access. So, you know, when I think about expanding the high school till we renovate in 10 years, no central office means room for carrying crew to.
Absolutely. And they'd pick up somewhere between 3 and 7 classrooms and a fair amount of office space if you were to move kind of all the non-high school folks out of the high school, which would be, and it's more than you would think. We've got special education there. We've got
No, there's a
community
lot of
use.
things
Yeah.
that you could move out to middle school east
Yep.
and allow the high school to expand. And you know, it was funny because I asked the question, I said, why do we need more space? We're only adding 1 child per year to the district. Because when I graduated in '74, our class was 222. 40 years later, we're at 260. That's 1 kid per year. And it was Jose Vieira that explained to me, he said, yes, but the square footage per kid, for us to be competitive, it's a lot more space now that we require per child.
And if you look at how Woodland is laid out, where there's flexible spacing for learning, it's fantastic. And that's the type of thing that, you know, I think our high school is great, but we'd love to kind of move in a direction where, you know, we'd have multiple spaces for students to learn and collaborate, use technology, that, you know, we can do to an extent, but it's not set up like some of the new high schools are, you know, around the state that have gone up in the last 3 to 5 years, let's say.
Yeah, but I can't see us building a new high school. Just no room, no place. I can see us building a new wing, and then systematically, okay, shut down A wing, move it into there, renovate, shut down B wing, and then you get that extra whole wing. Maybe a field house, which would be nice.
I'm hearing whispers about the field house from a few different places.
Well, you go to different places and you see Shrewsbury, I mean, to die for,
Right.
right? I mean, all these places, and you say, wow. Now,
And it would be nice because we've got the fantastic turf field, which is a state-of-the-art facility, and we'd love to have the indoor facility to match,
to match
that.
it.
Yeah.
And if we start planning, like I said, you know, school's coming. You know, so this year we got a $5 million surplus. Everybody got excited. And they said, what do you think? I said, not enough.
Yeah.
We want to pay off the old debt, you know, start clearing the deck so that 10 years from now, we don't have to go hit people up. You know, and let's talk about that. I mean, the budget challenge. Too much money and not enough places to spend it.
That's always our problem. Always.
How do we look?
I think we're in pretty good shape. We'll have a few requests, across the board, but I think we're in a good space. I think the last few years we've been able to ramp up some of our programs where we've needed some extra support. I think the community has been very, very generous with the schools. We always take a very conservative approach to budgeting. I know nobody on the finance committee would agree that I'm making that statement right now, but we do take our responsibility to be kind of. We're the biggest piece of the town budget.
60-odd%.
Yeah, and we do take that responsibility very seriously. But we also take the responsibility of providing a world-class education for each student also very seriously, and we have to merge those two.
And I think it's been a good relationship because it's like the school committee, it's their job to push and advocate as much as they can for the kids.
Absolutely.
Right. And our job is to not bankrupt the town.
Correct.
So, you kind of get to a point where you have to be able to go in and say, that dog doesn't hunt. You can have X percent, that's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember ever having a floor fight with the school committee, in the too many years that I've been there.
Mm-hmm. No, and I feel like every year, and this will be my 4th year that I've been involved in the process, and I feel like every year, it's a very reasonable discussion. And I think that, if we put together an argument why we need a particular program and it makes sense based on kind of the big picture, I think everybody kind of comes together around it.
I always worry that Kathy's carrying a little thing in her purse and sticking pins, and I'm, because
the back pain kicks in right about budget time?
You understand where she's coming from.
Absolutely.
Okay, got to fill the programs.
Right.
And you sit there and say, but I only have this much.
Right.
And at the end, I think what people don't understand is how exciting the discussions can become privately.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like with the IT battles we had.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we charted a course that seems to have worked out for both sides.
Yeah, I think we're moving, in a great direction. Again, the community was very supportive with the E-rate, the federal E-rate program, where we took the local money and we got a pretty substantial federal grant or federal match.
Well, we got to spend what, almost $1 million on
for $300,000
for 300 of our investment.
Yeah. Yeah. And so right now,
well, no, it's just at the end of the day, I'm sorry. $300,000 when you were growing up?
Yeah.
Maybe not. But when I was growing up, you could have bought Milford. They would have thrown in Hopedale.
It doesn't buy nearly as much anymore.
Just say, you're not going to get a lot.
No, but what it's allowing us to do is create a completely wireless infrastructure across the district. And it really sets us up to have that foundation that we need to really support the technology that I think students need, because that's going to be the expectation. There's very few jobs in the world where you don't touch technology on a regular basis.
Well, even the mechanics now. When I
all-
lift the hood of my car, there's a reason it's pure plastic with just 2 or 3 little holes.
Absolutely.
Add water, add oil, don't touch anything
yeah.
else.
Right.
Well, it's hard. It's hard when if you don't have the technology in your classroom, the kid is leaving every day and he has the world at his fingertips anyway. So if we don't educate Joey how to use the computer or how to use it appropriately, what are we teaching him?
Well, that was the whole basis when, too many years ago, Bob Tremblay and the school committee came to us and said we want to do a major lease program of computers. So I go back to my unbiased source, and I asked my daughter, I said, how are the computers in the media center? She says, you're kidding, right? I'm better off with an abacus and a stone tablet. And what she was explaining to me, she comes home, she's got the power to do the PowerPoints, the publisher and everything. She goes into the media center, and the little bird flies out like the Flintstones. And
Right.
So, it just made sense to sit there and say, wait a minute, if we're going to prepare our children, as you mentioned, for the real world, they got to have the technology at least half a century behind.
Right.
So it made perfect sense.
Yeah, so what we're doing in the next couple of weeks, which I think is very exciting, is we're rolling out the Chromebooks in every classroom at the Woodland Elementary School, which is part of the building project. And so every classroom, every student will have access to a Chromebook in every one of their classrooms. And so they'll be able to access the web. We've got Dr. Matt Joseph, who I think you've had on your show before.
Yes.
Who's been awesome. He hit the ground running. He's been training teachers. He's been working with students, and he's really kind of ramping up our ability to kind of really access these devices, use it for collaboration. And everybody that has them already, whether it's in a department or a classroom, are using them regularly, and it's enhancing what's happening in the classroom. We're not just throwing the Chromebooks in there to kind of, that's what we're using. Like, the technology is the end, but it's to enhance the
problem we've
learning.
had in the past. Is we go out, we buy a bunch of hardware, and now you say, okay, who is the advocate? Who's the thought leader to make sure that everybody's using these tools? And we never really had a champion.
The thing about Matt that I love about him is he's teacher first. You know, usually in the past we've had IT directors who haven't been able to come down to the teacher level and you know, come down and show them exactly what they want. You know, get from the wheelhouse to the engine room. We haven't had that person at all. It's great.
Well, to me, we needed somebody to deal with the iron. That when you turn the on button, when you push the on button, the dang computer turns on. Great. That, to me, is almost a different, I won't say mentality, because that's not kind, but it's a different perspective than I saw from Matt. Because he's talking about, okay, I'm expecting this stuff to work.
Right.
Let's just make it work, and now let's talk. You can see him getting excited about the programs.
Right.
And he's great because he's working with pre-K through 12, and he's like on demand. Like, he's almost in every building every day. It's amazing. And he's meeting with teachers, administrators, and really helping them to either use tools in the classroom to support whatever the teacher is teaching. But he's also working with administrators to improve communication, efficiency, some of our operations. We're completely revamping our teacher evaluation system and moving that to a Google platform, and we're piloting this year, and I anticipate that will be our platform in 17-18. And Dr. Joseph is kind of the architect behind this whole project. And the teachers love it because they were frustrated with some of the commercial products we've used in the past. And this is just a more efficient and easy way to do business, and it's part of what they're doing every day.
Well, I mean, the other thing was we didn't have the infrastructure.
Correct.
Again,
Correct.
I come home and I hear, I have the I can computer. I said, the what? I push the button, he goes, I think I can, I think I can. He says, one electron flows down the pipe every other minute. And now, I mean, when I think about Woodland, seems like Aldo and Jonathan hijacked the IT level and brought everything up to a Class A network.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, painful, but the right thing to do. Because now everything else will just feed into it.
And it's absolutely where we need to be.
Because Kerry's not going to put up with, excuse me, what do they have down there?
Right.
How big is their pipe?
Right.
You know, and you Brookside, Memorial, all the principals are going to be saying, hey, I want in.
You think about a 5th grade student that we have today sitting at Woodland, they're moving to Stacy next year. So we have to have the same kind of tools for these kids in Stacy that we do in 5th grade.
Yeah, you're never going to let them leave Woodland and then take 5 years back in technology.
And we just can't do it because they can't move from a technology wonderland to, I don't want to say Stacy's a wasteland, but they just don't, right now they don't have the devices on site that Woodland will have in a couple of weeks.
But even as silly as the phones.
Right.
Right.
You know, I mean, Stacy had wonderful Progresso cans with the wires, and, you know, they couldn't talk to any other school building.
Right.
Easily.
You couldn't even call out. You can't. I mean, what are we doing? All we can do is call the main office or call another classroom, and that's it. They have to sit in line and wait to call a parent.
Oh my God.
I mean, what year are we in?
Yeah, and I mean, you sit there and say, it's hard for people to understand that $60+ million a year, and you can't afford a phone?
Right.
You know what they forget? It's 60 grand to put a phone system in.
Absolutely, and there's all kinds of backup to that, and connecting it to the rest of the network. It's just a big undertaking, but I think by the end of the year, for sure, we're going to be there, and we've wrapped up. Stacy is just about to close out. Memorial, Brookside, and the high school are next, and that will put everybody. It'll put everybody with that infrastructure and that wireless network that will support that 21st century learning that I think the students are craving, because they're a device generation.
You think about it, they go home and that's what they live with. Or some of the kids who aren't as fortunate go to the library. And
Absolutely.
Sue Edmonds has put a heck of a program in there to support the kids. Because you can see after school the Stacy the mob.
Yeah.
It's like locusts. They just
Right
run
over
right
there.
across.
Right.
And they want to be able to use technology.
Absolutely. And it's what the world is using. And we want our school to be reflective of what the practice is wherever they're going to go.
Another pleasant experience is meeting an AD who seems to get it. Not that the old ones didn't, but in today's day and age, where I remember I was absolutely, I can't express the feeling when I heard our Secretary of Education years ago talk about how we should set a goal of graduating 30% of our athletes at some of the main colleges. And I just sat there and said, the goal is 30%?
Right.
Because he was talking about Florida, and they were batting an average of about 18% graduated. So it really bothered me. And yet I meet this new AD, and he used student athlete. I said, this man gets it.
And the thing I love, and actually Peter's followed a similar trajectory that Matt Joseph did in terms of building level administrator who shifted into kind of a different role that they were really born to do. And you know, and if you talk to Peter for 5 minutes, you can't help but get enthusiastic about what's happening in Milford, because he just bleeds Milford red, to use one of your phrases. I mean, he is just the most enthusiastic.
It's not that we didn't, when you had Nick.
They're all great.
had
They're all very enthusiastic.
He leads with, I care about my student athletes.
And he walks the walk too.
Yeah.
And not only that is he encourages them to take on leadership roles. I mean, he does his leadership institute and really trains them to be leaders, which is the part that I love too. You know, how many more kids can we get to just help each other out? So.
Well, see, that was always the thing. I mean, we were fortunate that we inherited some daughters that played soccer in Boston. And they lived with us. You know, it was like, can you put up a girl for a weekend, a week, a month? 2 years later, they're still living here, right? But the girls, women, soccer players, in my mind, got it more than the men did. I know that's terribly sexist, but that's my experience. They understood that they were not just playing for the U.S. national team, but they were role models to so many kids. And, you know, and to hear Pete talk about the leadership skills he's teaching, I felt really comfortable, like, yeah, he gets it.
And the program he's running is being kind of, the MIA is pulling from what we're doing, the state level association is pulling from what we're doing here in Milford, what Peter has kind of started, and it's kind of taken off across the state. And he's being asked to, you know, go into state level meetings to talk about the leadership model that we're using in Milford. And it's really making a difference, because you can see, and it doesn't just, like Craig was saying, it's not just impacting the athletic field, it's impacting what we're seeing kind of in the hallways of Milford High School.
But that's what I mean by a role model.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, when you get these athletes that are being held up every week for special recognition because they did well volleyball, baseball, football, whatever it is, okay, there are kids who look up to them.
Absolutely.
Certainly is.
You know, and if you allow them to be rectums, it's going to have a negative impression. When you teach them and infuse in them their responsibility. You know, if you're the top athlete in any sport and you're a top academic performer, that's got to show, you know, leadership
Absolutely.
to the kids who are struggling a little bit.
Yeah, but not only at Milford High School, at the younger grades too. You know, last year and the year before, we worked with Pete at Woodland, and we brought in a bunch of captains, and I think we had representation from most teams. I'm not sure if it was all. But they came in and they read stories to the kids, and you don't, I hope that it opened their eyes to see just how these younger kids looked up to them and saw them as that. As
And
role
anybody
models.
who's coached knows it.
Yeah.
Because when I used to try and do like header, I always remember the headers. The girls didn't like doing header drills. Yet, when some of the girls on the national team came to the house for dinner, I used to tell them, you got to earn your dinner. Come run my practice. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you would have thought that header drills were the favorite active. The fact that Kerry or one of the other girls tried a header and showed them. Now every girl's lining up. I'm like, okay, who are they and what alien took over their body? It really did have a fundamental impact.
No, it does. It absolutely does.
And when they talked about how hard they had to work academically at Carolina, Stanford, and the places, that this was 40 hours a week plus a full load. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the kids really understood it, but it set those ideas in their mind. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about this whole idea of the leadership program and spreading it out.
And you can see the impact at Milford High School, and I think Peter has made a tremendously positive impact, not only at the high school, but he serves on a number of district level committees and does a lot of work because
Okay,
he does
you
have that
chaining them down so they don't steal them?
Absolutely. I've got LoJack on a few of these guys.
I was going to say, I mean, it reminds me of Rob Quinn when he came. It's like, okay, guys, don't let anybody know how good this guy is.
And we really do have a number of superstars, with Peter, who's I think just probably one of the best athletic directors, if not the best athletic director in the state. We've got Matt Joseph, who I think is transforming how we're doing teaching and learning from a technology perspective across the district. This guy to my left is okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right. Don't forget Rob. Rob is probably the biggest unsung hero we have.
He really is. He really is.
But you have so many in the school system that, I always laugh because nobody thinks of Rob until there's a problem.
Right.
Right? It's like an IT guy. Nobody worries about the IT guys till the network isn't up.
Right.
Right.
But there's so many people doing so many wonderful things for our kids. Mm-hmm.
And it's really all a lot of behind the scenes work, and I think there's a humility that a lot of these guys have that I think really helps make the team really work effectively and efficiently.
Well, I look forward to 3 months from now when we have you back to find out how the new Woodland's going together and all the new programs. And as always, it's amazing what programs, what services, and how much help is available to our kids. Jose Vieira once taught me that, he said, if you want to get the most out of the school, get involved. And that was probably the best lesson I ever learned, was to get involved. Any way you can, whether it's being there a lot or just when you can, makes a huge difference. Excuse me. So as always, thank you for everything you do for our kids.
Thanks for having us today, Al.
And to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just